Hi, I'm Toby from Ableton Drummer. This is a run through all the functions of the editor for the Nord Drum 3P. You will need Max for Live, the Max for Live extension for Ableton Live to use this. Max for Live is included in the Ableton Live Suite version, or you can buy it as an add-on. Okay, so obviously you first need to download the whole folder for the 3P, including some presets and including a routing preset, which is really important to set up right. Otherwise, the connection and the talking between Ableton Live and the 3P won't work. To install the 3P editor, you just need to open the downloaded ALP file. So you can do this by just drag and dropping this into Ableton Live, and it will then ask you where the content should be installed. So I created a folder for that on my desktop. I'm gonna select this one, and now it's unpacking all the files in there, and you can now add this folder into your live browser. So for example, I go onto my desktop and select this ALP content folder here, click on open, and now if I select this ALP content folder, I get all the different MIDI effects in here, and I got the routing preset in here as well. So I can now just open this one up, and inside here there are the presets as well. However, I prefer to install everything into my user library because this just makes more sense for me. So if you want to do this as well, keep watching. If not, you can just go to the next chapter in this tutorial. Okay, so let's have a look how we can install all those files into our user library. So let's create a folder for the 3P editor here. So maybe let's call this editor all and spell it right. Okay, so we now have this folder here for all the files, and let's create 3 more folders in here because we have 3 different things we want to install here. So let's create one for the Max for Live devices. Let's create one for the presets. And let's create one for the routing template. So select the editor all, right click and go to new folder, and so the routing presets or routing preset would be saved later on once after you have created your own routing preset. Of course, you can store this wherever you want, but this is just one way of how to organize this. So let's have a look again. So after we unpacked all those files in a folder, we can now access those files via the Finder, and we have to go to the presets, MIDI effects, Max MIDI effects, important, and here are all the different files we will need. So this is like the main editor file, and then we need 6 more files which are for the routing, for the sending to the Nord Drum. So now we can select all of those and just drag and drop those into the folder where we want those in our user library, and they will be now stored in the user library. So if you migrate to a new computer and if you have a backup of your user library, this will be all the references and all the directions will be saved right here and will be recalled right when you open up an old Ableton Live set on a migrated computer. Okay, so the routing presets work a bit different. We have to open the file we got in here, which is the Ableton ALS file. So this might take a little because it needs to load a lot of content. So grab yourself a coffee or a tea or maybe some water, even better. Okay, so it opened now, and you can see we have all those different presets in here. You can take all the different presets as together and just drag and drop those into the folder or where you want to store those. And now if you press enter, all those files will be copied into your user library. This takes a little time again. And now they're stored in here and you can recall those in any set. So for the routing preset, this makes sense to save after you set up your own routing preset, obviously, which will come later on in this tutorial. The routing template is really important because Ableton Live is only able to send MIDI out on one channel at a time, on one MIDI channel. But we want to access all 6 pads on the 3P, and this way we need 6 channels to send on those 6 different channels. Actually, we need 7 channels because we want to send some stuff on the global channel here as well. So this might sound confusing at the beginning, but it's really easy to understand. I will walk you through that. Plus, you just need to set this up once and then just save it as a preset. And I'm going to show this to you now. You obviously first need to make a connection, a MIDI connection between your computer and your Nord drum. So for example, many external sound cards have MIDI DIN sockets out and in at the back, and you can just plug in one here on the MIDI out from your external sound card towards the MIDI in, which is on your 3P, because in the first part we only want to send MIDI changes to the 3P. We want to edit sounds on the 3P from Ableton Live, so we're sending MIDI from Ableton Live to. So we're going out from the computer or from the external sound card in to the Nord drum 3P. This is USB to MIDI cable here, so you can use this as well if you don't have an external sound card with any MIDI out. Okay, so I need to plug this in, and then if the connection is made right, you are able to start. So make sure that your port is active under your preferences. So what you will need now is the track output. Here it's my ESI MIDI made port 1, and I want to be able to send out MIDI from a track, so I need to switch this one on. Okay, so now I can load the routing template by double-clicking on it, and it will open up in Ableton Live. So, and that's actually it. So this is the 3P editor, and I'm sending out MIDI from this device, plus I have 6 more channels here. So for every pad, I have 1 channel here, which I need to send MIDI to via the device, which is the devices are doing internally, but I need to set up those right. So what I need to do here is I need to set the first channel to my out port. In this case, it's MIDI made 1. No, it's MIDI made 2 actually. I got 2 ports here on 1 cable, so this is confusing. I'm sending out MIDI from port 2. So you need to set this to the MIDI 2 out port, which is in my case port 2 from the ESI MIDI made, and then channel 10. So this is the global channel for most drum MIDI instruments or hardware. So I need to set this to 10. So this is for the global parameters like the delay and the reverb, and for changing pads selection, for example. Then I have 6 more channels here, and they all need to be set to the MIDI 2 out port you're using here as well, and the channels need to be set from 1 up to 6. Yeah, so you need to do this when you're opening up this template, because you will use a different MIDI port here. And then when you have set this up once, you can actually just take those two tracks here and put them somewhere in your user library, store those in your user library, and just name those like 3P, like my 3P routing presets. And the beauty here is, whenever I have a new Ableton Live set, I want to use this routing, I can just drag and drop this into this set and it will open up. And if your MIDI port is connected, it will set the right MIDI port here already. So you can see this if I open this up, you know, so it's taking all the different MIDI 2 things I set here earlier in the other set. They are set already, so I can just start playing now. Cool, so this is the setup. Let's have a look on how to control stuff now from the editor on the 3P. You can see that the order of the parameters are a bit different than there are on your actual 3P, and that's for a reason. Because I wanted to have the levels of each sound engine, for example. I wanted to have this at the front of each sound engine. I think it makes much more sense. The same is like with the order of distortion, EQ, delay, and reverb, for example, here, because this is actually the signal flow of your 3P. All the three sound engines are going parallel into, first, if you apply some, into the distortion, then into EQing, then into delay, and then into reverb. So this is the difference here regarding like the order of the parameters on your 3P here itself. So let's just pull up a preset so things might be a bit better to understand. So I can just like now put some stuff on here, or I could just double click on it and it will load as well. So I don't need a device in here. I can just click on the preset and it will load the preset itself. Okay, so I have different channels here. I can select, and you can see all those different channels are having different presets in here. So those are all the different drum pads on my 3P. So let's select the drum select here, so I can actually monitor on which channel I'm currently on my 3P here as well. For this, the select on 3P toggle down here needs to be switched to on. So this way I'm selecting the different parameters, the different pads, channels here on my 3P itself. So if you want to control stuff, some stuff on here as well, you can do that at the same time. But for now, and this is really important, we're only sending MIDI from Ableton Live from this 3P editor to the 3P. So if I now make some changes on here, they are not being shown and they're not going to be reflected in the actual editor, because it's just one way talking now at the moment. We will come to this. You can talk back as well from the 3P to the editor, but there is some limitation here, and we're going to come to that later. Okay, so I have all those different channels I can access here now, and you can see if I select, for example, the resonance and filter type here, I can see if I'm changing something, yeah, in the editor, it will change on the 3P directly. So you can actually play this and then do some changes. So maybe just, I'm not sure what to use here. I don't have the headphones on now, but just to show you, if you're playing stuff here and then put up the level of the noise and put down the level of the tone. Yeah, so you can access all those parameters, writing automations, using other Max for Live devices to create some randomness here, or MIDI mapping your playing velocity to some parameters with, for example, my Velo 2 MIDI device here. So there are a lot of options here. Plus, you get all the single drum presets, which are factory presets from the Nord drum. You can access those inside the editor here itself. So you actually don't need to touch the 3P if you're not using if you don't want to use the factory kits here, which are not in the editor. But for example, you can just select the hi-hat 3 preset here, yeah, or you can just select a different preset here. I'm not hearing the sound, so I hope when I'm watching this and gonna cut this video, the sound is gonna be fine. But I'm pretty sure, so yeah, you got all those presets in here, and then you can go to a different field, select a different preset, change your parameters, and then you can actually store this again as a, let's call it my custom 3P sound 1, yeah? And in any Ableton Live set, you can now recall this preset. Obviously, you need to put in this whole section here for routing the MIDI to the 3P. This is what we saved, like the routing preset, routing template, what we saved in the first part of this tutorial. Put this in and then put on the main track your custom presets, done. And you can record those really quickly, really easy. So in some use cases, you're gonna use multiple instances of 3P editors here. So let us set this up. So let's say you got like 2 in here, 2 presets you want to use. And so every time you're loading something in here, like a main editor device, the sounds will change because they are coming in and the MIDI gets sent out. So when you're opening up a template or an Ableton Live set, I mean, if you're opening up an Ableton Live set, you will send out all the MIDI which is set in the 3P editor, which is stored in your Ableton Live set. So this could create some conflict here if you have more than one device, obviously, because MIDI gets sent out, and maybe your Nord drum 3P is a bit overwhelmed with all this MIDI it is getting and in which order as well. So you could actually send out all the current values you have on one channel, for example. So let's say I want to have those settings here for my pad 1, channel 1 being sent out. I can shoot those values out all at once if I shoot and click here in the shoot section under current, bomb, and I'm sending out all those values now. So maybe I want to send out all channels, meaning like 1 to 6. I have those 6 different channels here and I want to send those out. So I have to go and click on all channels. So now all channels are being sent out. So this becomes handy now if you have like more than one 3P editor in your Ableton Live set, because then you actually want to change between presets maybe. And you can actually now go to the second one and send all channels out from this one here. Yeah, so this is how you can change quickly. Go to the first one again, send those out. Yeah, you get the picture. So if you're using multiple editors, or if you're loading an Ableton Live set and not everything was synced and set up right already, maybe the MIDI out port wasn't set up right or something like this, you need to shoot like all the parameters from your editor to your Nord drum 3P. Okay, so now let's have a look on some automations opportunities you're getting here, because actually you can edit every of those parameters here. So maybe let's do some nice reverb fade here for the channel 1. So we have this reverb button here. Yeah, you get the picture. So you can actually automate this, or writing envelopes or automations in arrangement view. So I create a new MIDI clip here by double clicking on an empty clip slot, and I have to open up the envelope view here, and I'm in my custom 3P sound, and I'm gonna select the reverb amount for channel 1, and I'm now gonna write some automation here, so you can see this. If we have a look on 3P, actually if we're playing the clip, this is now being automated. So obviously this is really quick and just one example of what you can do. So if I play now on my pad 1, yeah, and you can monitor this obviously as well on your 3P itself. If you go to reverb delay, you can see this automation here, or this envelope, is being sent to the 3P and is changing this parameter here. Obviously, this is just a really easy example, but just think about this, how you can create different soundscapes here just by changing settings in an Ableton Live set from MIDI clips here, just dummy clips, maybe switching to different settings for your 3P. And this can be done like obviously with like all parameters in here. So you can see the list is really long. You can change quite a lot. Well, you can change everything on your 3P. Just not the SCL pre, which is like the tonal setting. You can select from inside your 3P. I left this out of the quotation because you have so much control over the 3P here anyways, over the pitch I mean, so you can automate this to your needs much better in here. Okay, so for the pitch, one important thing here, you actually have a really interesting system here with the 3P. So if it's set to 60, it's like the root note, it's a C3 or a C4 in this case. So if you're sending MIDI notes from Ableton Live and if you want to play melodic, this needs to be set to 60 and 0. So this is the second part here, the second field for the pitch. So then you can actually play a MIDI piano and send in sounds only on this channel, and you can play melodics here as well. Maybe I should do a different tutorial about that. But you need to know that you actually have two parameters here which are on the 3P controlled by one wheel, and here we got two wheels. We got like half tones, so this is now 60.5, and if I want to go to 61.0, I have to set this to 0 again. So I couldn't bring those two parameters together for just one knob because it's happening on two different control change messages in the Nord-Drum 3P. You can obviously access all those parameters via external MIDI hardware here as well. So for example, I'm using a Korg Nano Control 2 here, which is sending MIDI control changes to Ableton Live, and I can now put any other or any controller I want to use here, any parameter I want to use here. For example, the reverb amount of channel 4 we are right now here. Sorry, you need to go into the MIDI map menu, which is on the far up right here, or you're pressing Command M for that. Or you can select the parameter here and say Edit MIDI map. So now you can select the parameter you want to control. In my case, reverb amount. I just move the fader, and now this reverb amount is mapped to my fader here on my external MIDI controller. So this becomes really nice when you perform live or when you want to change parameters while you're playing. So for example, if you want to change all the reverb amounts for the amount reverb for all channels, or for one or for two, you can set up like your custom controls here and have access over parameters. And this is like breaking with the limitation of like only having one knob and tipping somewhere. Like I'm guessing not many people are doing this when they're playing live. So for one example, you can use, or another example would be, you can use like an all channel mask here as well. So this is the same like you got on the 3P itself. You can press Shift and edit here, and now you can edit all channels on the same time. So this function is available in the 3P editor Max for Live device here as well. You have an all button here. And as soon as you press this, you can see in the parameter changing, because it's a different new layer you can use for changing all the parameters on all channels on the same time. So for MIDI mapping, for example, if we go into Edit MIDI Map and let us delete the mapping we did earlier, I now want to control the reverb amount of all parameters with one fader here. So I'm in the all channel all section, and I'm now controlling all the reverb amount of this of all channels here with one fader. Okay, so now you can see I've set up my push to here, and you get access in the live banks over all the different parameters of the 3P editor. So let's have a look here. So for example, I have different areas here, or different banks I can select. So in the first bank you get the preset and mix section. So you can see on the 3P now itself, if I'm changing here to the different channels, or I can change via the first wheel here to the different channels, and then I can select a different preset of the single presets on the second knob for the currently selected channel. So if I go to channel 6 and want to put in some snare drum, or I want to try some snare drum, so this will scroll through all the different presets you got in here itself. Then you have like all the different levels for the different channels here, which would be like we're on channel 6 now, so you can access this here. So as you can access all parameter on here, it was difficult to decide which concept here to take for actually setting up all those parameters in the live banks or in the like encoders section here of the push. So I decided to do it this way. You're gonna get the first channel parameters, and then it's going to the second one, and then it's going to the third one, and 4th, 5, 6, and at the end you get like the all section. If you remember, you have those all channels edit section here where you can select everything, all channels. So if you want to change reverb delay at the end here, the amount will now be changed for all the different channels and pads, and I put the color and the type section here as well for the reverb and the feedback and the rate here as well. There's one more interesting connection here you can do, which would be sending parameter changes or sending presets-ish from the actual 3P towards the 3P editor. You might have some nice presets on your 3P you want to transfer towards the 3P editor and store those in Ableton Live, or maybe have them a bit more flexible in there. So what you need to do is you need to make another MIDI connection, because you're now sending MIDI from the Nord Drum 3P towards the MIDI out. So I need to plug this in here, lots of cables already. And so this is now going into my Ableton Live, or into my computer via my USB connection. So what I need to do now is I need to switch on the input on this track here. So if I, maybe let's fold away the return and send views here. So I get like now MIDI from my ESI MIDI made export 1, this connection here. I'm receiving now MIDI, and I'm now able, if I set this to in, for example, and you can see now, let's go to the same parameter here. I'm now on 1, and maybe let's change the resonance here, and you can see it's receiving MIDI from the 3P here now and is changing those parameters. So let's change a few, and you can see, because you have quite a lot of different parameters here. So if I switch to something like pitch, you know, you can see, it's lighting up red, and you can see where you are. So there are two very important things here to see, because what's actually happening, even when I'm switching, I'm going to the right channel on the editor here itself. So this is cool, but you might not always be in sync. You might not always be sending on the right channel. So for example, if I switch this channel, this track off, and now if I'm selecting number 5, set this to off, now I'm selecting number 1, for example. So I'm on 1 now. I switch this all to on again, so it's now receiving MIDI, but it's still on channel number 5 in the editor. So what happens now, if I go to this, I will change, even if I'm changing stuff here on channel 1 on the actual Nord Drum 3P, I will change stuff on the channel 5 in this editor, because not the same channel here is selected. It is now again, but just to make sure you know this, you can even send stuff to all channels here. For example, yeah, you can see resolution, dynamic filter, etc. So you're changing this now for all. You can see resolution and dynamic filter are changed to all different parameters here now. But just make sure that you have the right channel or all channels selected, depending on what you want to do here, to send the right MIDI changes towards the 3P editor.